The US and China have a complicated relationship. They've worked together and competed for over 100 years. In the early 1900s, the US supported China's nationalist government. They even fought together against Japan in World War II. But things changed after the Chinese Communist Party won the Chinese Civil War in 1949. During the Cold War, they were on opposite sides. Things warmed up a bit in the 1970s when President Nixon visited China. In the years that followed, their economies became more connected. But lately things have been getting tense again. China's growing economy and military are seen as a challenge by the US. This tension is caused by things like disagreements over trade, who controls the South China Sea, and the issue of Taiwan. The US thinks China is acting aggressively in the South China Sea. China's military activities there are worrying. The US responds by sailing its ships through the area to show that it's international water. This just makes things more tense. Taiwan is another big problem. China believes Taiwan is part of its territory. The US has promised to help defend Taiwan. If China ever tried to take Taiwan by force, it would probably lead to a big fight between the two superpowers. The US and China have the strongest militaries in the world. Each has its strengths and weaknesses. The US military is very advanced and can operate anywhere in the world. It also has a lot of experience from fighting wars. The US Navy is the most powerful in the world, with 11 aircraft carriers that can launch planes anywhere. China's military has been getting much better. It's made big improvements in areas like really fast missiles and cyber warfare. China's military is mostly focused on its own region. It's built up its forces to be able to fight against the US in the Pacific. This includes a lot of missiles designed to sink ships. If they ever fought, the US would probably use its advantage in the air and sea to control the area and attack from a distance. China would likely use different tactics that take advantage of specific weaknesses. This could include cyber attacks, weapons that target satellites, and long-range missiles aimed at US bases. These attacks could disrupt the US military's ability to operate. The geography of the Asia-Pacific region would be really important. China is closer to potential battlefields, which gives it an advantage. The US military would have to move its troops and supplies over very long distances. A war between the US and China would be terrible for the world's economy. Their economies are very connected. China is America's biggest trading partner. A war would disrupt the flow of goods around the world, leading to shortages and higher prices for everyone. Some industries would be hit especially hard. The technology industry relies on parts from China, so it would face big problems. Global financial markets would be in chaos. The value of the US dollar and the Chinese yuan would likely drop significantly. The conflict would probably cause a global recession. How bad it gets would depend on how long and how intense the fighting is. Developing countries that rely on trade with both the US and China would suffer the most. The war would make existing inequalities worse, and could lead to social unrest. Beyond the immediate economic damage, a war would have long-term consequences. It would cause the global economy to split apart. Countries might feel like they have to choose sides, leading to the formation of competing economic groups. This would slow down innovation and make everyone poorer. A war between the United States and China would completely change the world's political landscape. It would probably divide the world. Countries would have to choose sides. Alliances would change. It would be very difficult to stay neutral. The conflict would have a huge impact on international organizations like the United Nations. The UN's ability to help resolve conflicts would be seriously damaged. The Security Council, which is often unable to agree on things already, would be completely unable to act because of US-China rivalry. The war would weaken the current rules-based international order and encourage authoritarian regimes. These regimes would see a chance to increase their power in a world where the US is less influential. This would have serious consequences for human rights and democracy everywhere. The conflict would also have a big impact on the future of globalization. It could lead to a decline in the interconnectedness that we've seen in recent decades. This would have far-reaching consequences for trade, investment, and cultural exchange. Preventing a war between the United States and China is extremely important. It requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of tension and establishes effective mechanisms for crisis management and conflict resolution. Dialogue and diplomacy are essential. The two countries need to have honest and open discussions to manage their differences and find common ground. Regular meetings between high-level officials and working groups are crucial to building trust and preventing misunderstandings. Economic interdependence can help create stability. Both countries need to address trade disputes fairly and transparently. They should cooperate on issues that affect everyone, like climate change and global health security. This cooperation can foster a sense of shared responsibility and reduce the risk of conflict. Confidence-building measures are essential to reduce the risk of accidental escalation. This includes setting up direct lines of communication between their militaries and agreeing on rules for encounters at sea and in the air. Being open about military exercises and deployments can help reduce mistrust and miscalculation. International institutions have a role to play in preventing war. The UN, despite its weaknesses, can provide a place for dialogue. Regional organizations like ASEAN can facilitate cooperation and confidence building in the Asia-Pacific region. The possibility of war between the United States and China reminds us of how fragile peace is. The consequences of such a conflict would be catastrophic. It's not an exaggeration to say that the future of humanity is at stake. We must choose peace. This requires leadership, wisdom, and a shared commitment to dialogue and cooperation. We must reject the appealing but dangerous ideas of nationalism and militarism. We must embrace the interconnectedness of our world and the need to find peaceful solutions to even the most difficult problems. The alternative is unthinkable. A war between the United States and China would be a tragedy, not just for the two countries, but for the whole world. We have a moral obligation to future generations to prevent such a catastrophe. Let us choose wisely, let us choose peace.